Windsor Road was buzzing like a beehive. The sun was beating down early in the morning, but no one was complaining the annual yard sale was the highlight of the summer. Tables lined both sides of the street, piled high with a year's worth of hoarded goods. Old records, kids' bikes, coffee mugs with silly slogans. Kids scurried between adults, offering lemonade for $1, while someone's speaker blasted an old Taylor Swift song. Nathan Walker stood at his desk, wiping sweat from his brow. His golf clubs, neatly laid out on the blue tablecloth, glinted in the sun. He adjusted his sunglasses and scanned the street like a general inspecting a battlefield. "Hey, Caleb, come here," he called, spotting his friend fiddling with a box of books 2 tables away. "Look at this beauty. Ping G 425, almost new. I'll give it to you for $100. Caleb Thompson, tall and slightly gray at the temples, looked up and grinned. He dusted his hands and walked over, holding a tattered copy of Stephen King. "Nathan, you know I don't play golf," he said, shaking his head. "And for $100, I'd rather buy a new couch. That set of yours looks like you cracked nuts with it." Nathan laughed, clapping Caleb on the shoulder. "Nuts? I played with these clubs on the field at Pinehurst. It's a legend, brother. Ask anyone who understands." "Does he realize you're trying to sell him old crap?" Caleb narrowed his eyes, but his smile was warm. "Okay, save them for some rich guy. I'd rather sell my books. Look, a first edition of The Shining. $50. Nathan whistled, picking up a book. 50. Are you a robber? For that price, I expected King's autograph. I'll give you an autograph if you buy it. Caleb took the book back. Come on, help me carry the box. Sophie is already grumbling that I'm doing everything slowly. Nathan glanced back at his desk, where his wife, Abby, stood with her phone, taking pictures of the clubs. Her long brown hair was pulled back into a ponytail, and her white tank top was slightly stuck to her back from the heat. She wasn't looking at him, completely absorbed in her screen. "Abby, watch the merchandise," Nathan called. "I'm going to the Thompsons in a minute." Abby looked up, but her smile was forced. "Yes, of course," she said, without looking up from her phone. "Just don't disappear for an hour like last time." "Oh, come on, that was one time." Nathan winked, but she had already turned away, lining up a shot for Instagram. Caleb noticed her reaction, but said nothing. He nodded toward his desk, where Sophia was arranging books with military precision. Her blonde hair was braided, and her blue dress looked like she had just stepped out of the office, not rummaging through dusty boxes. "Sophia, look who I brought," Caleb said, setting the box on the table. "Nathan wants your first edition for $10. 10? Sophia raised an eyebrow, placing her hands on her hips. "Nathan, you're a financial advisor, and you're haggling like you're at a flea market. 50, and that's a friend discount." Nathan raised his hands in surrender. Okay, Sophia, you're cruel, but I'll think about it. Maybe we can trade a hockey stick for a book, a club." Sophia snorted. "I don't need your golf sticks. Better get something for Abby. She's alone there while you're wagging your tongue." Nathan glanced back at Abby. She was still filming, now rearranging her clubs for a better angle. He frowned, but quickly returned the smile. "She's fine. It's her job, you know. Posts, likes, all that crap. Brings in a couple hundred a month." "A couple hundred?" Caleb shook his head. "I thought she was just shooting for fun." "Well, that too," Nathan shrugged. "But I told her if she wants to spend time blogging, she should at least make it pay." Sophia looked at Abby, her gaze softening. "It must be hard for her," she said quietly. "You're always at meetings, the kids, the house. The blog is her outlet." "An outlet?" Nathan chuckled. "She spends half the day on the phone and then complains that she's tired. But okay, let's not talk about sad things. Caleb, tell me, how's your project going? That mall downtown." Caleb sighed, placing another box on the table. "It's going, but slowly. The customer wants to redo everything, but the budget doesn't allow it. To be honest, I'm already thinking about giving up." "Quit?" Nathan slapped him on the back. You're the best architect in Charlotte. Don't give up, brother. If anything happens, I'll find you an investor." "Yeah, right," Caleb chuckled, but his eyes were tired. "Sell your clubs first, investor." As they chatted across the street, at a table lined with colorful sweatpants, Vanessa Cruz smiled at an older man holding a pair of sneakers. "These Nikes are almost new," she said, adjusting her dark hair. "My husband has run into them a couple of times, but they're too big for him. $20, and they're yours." The man nodded and reached into his wallet, and Vanessa glanced at Marcus, who stood to the side with his arms crossed, his black t-shirt damp with sweat, his face dark as a storm. "Marcus, hand me the box of t-shirts," she called out, still smiling. Marcus walked over slowly, throwing the box onto the table so hard it almost fell over. "Maybe you should take it yourself," he muttered. "I'm not your loader." Vanessa rolled her eyes, but her voice remained sweet. "Don't start, okay? We're making money here." "Money?" Marcus snorted, lowering his voice. "You're making eyes at every other person here. Do you think I'm blind?" The customer, embarrassed, quickly shoved a 20 at Vanessa and walked away. She turned to Marcus, her smile gone. "Seriously, Marcus," she hissed. "This is my job. I'm a fitness trainer. I'm supposed to be friendly. Stop making a scene." "Friendly?" Marcus stepped closer, his voice growing louder. "You practically crawled on your knees in front of that old man." "Quiet, damn it," Vanessa grabbed his arm, pulling him away from the table. "People are watching. Do you want the whole street talking about your paranoia?" Marcus pulled his hand away, but paused, glancing at his neighbors. Several people, including Sophia, glanced in their direction, but quickly looked away. Vanessa took a deep breath, returned to the table, and began laying out the shirts as if nothing had happened. Abby, standing at Nathan's desk, finally put her phone down. She noticed Vanessa and Marcus's argument, but her mind was elsewhere. She opened Instagram, checking the likes on her latest post, a photo of their house with the caption, "Getting ready for a sale, Family Day." There were fewer likes than usual, and she frowned. "Haley, Owen, come here," she called, noticing the children selling lemonade outside the house next door. Haley, a 14-year-old with long blonde hair, rolled her eyes but walked over, tugging her younger brother, Owen, by the hand. His t-shirt was stained with lemonade, and he was holding an empty pitcher. "Mom, we sold almost everything," Haley said, adjusting her baseball cap. "Can we go see our friends?" "First, help me." Abby pointed to the box of dishes. "Lay these out on the table. And Owen, don't break anything like you did last year." "I didn't break it," Owen protested, kicking the box. Haley dropped the plate. "Oh yeah, sure, blame it on me." Haley nudged him with her shoulder. "Mom, he's lying." "That's enough, both of you." Abby rubbed her temples tiredly. "Just do what I said. Dad's busy, and I can't do this alone." Haley sighed but opened the box, pulling out the old mugs. Owen started to help, but he was more waving his arms than working. Nathan returned to the table, carrying a box of books for Sophia. He glanced at Abby and the children. "So, Instagram star, how many likes did you get?" he asked, putting the box on the ground. Abby tensed, but forced herself to smile. "I haven't checked yet," she lied, putting the phone in her pocket. "Where have you been? I thought you were just going to help Caleb." "Yeah, and chatted while I was at it," Nathan shrugged. "It's a sale, Abby. You need to socialize, make connections. You should try that too, instead of staring at your phone." Abby pressed her lips together, but said nothing. She turned away, adjusting her clubs to hide her irritation. Nathan didn't notice. He was already greeting a neighbor who had come over to look at his wares. "Mr. Davis, how are you?" Nathan extended his hand to the older man in the straw hat. "Look at these clubs. They'll be perfect for your son." "My son doesn't play golf." Davis shook his head. "But I'll take that bag for $5. "5?" Nathan laughed. "It's worth at least 20. Let's make it 15, and I'll throw it in a golf bag." Davis chuckled, but reached into his pocket for the money. Abby looked at Nathan, his wide smile, his confident voice, and felt something inside her clench. He had always been like this, the center of attention, charming, successful. And she was just his wife, his mother, a blogger no one took seriously. Sophia walked up to their table, holding a stack of books in her hands. Abby, do you want to pick up anything? She asked, smiling. We have a couple of novels you might like. Abby forced herself to smile back. Maybe later, she said. I'm busy with this right now. She nodded toward the table. I understand. Sophia put the books on the edge of the table. If anything, I'll leave you one. For free for a friend. Thank you, Abby nodded, but her voice was dull. She looked at Sophia, her perfect braid, her confident smile, and felt a twinge of envy. Sophia always looked put together, even in the heat, even among the dusty boxes. Caleb joined them, wiping his hands on his jeans. Abby, did you see Vanessa and Marcus fighting again? He asked, lowering his voice. They're putting on quite a show. Abby glanced across the street. Vanessa was speaking sharply to Marcus, who stood with his arms crossed and looked away. Yes, I saw, she said. Marcus doesn't seem to be in the mood. He's never in the mood, Sophia sighed. Vanessa says he's jealous of every client. I don't know how she lives with him. Maybe he's just tired, Caleb shrugged. Auto repair is no picnic. And Vanessa, well, she likes attention, that's obvious. She likes attention. Sophia narrowed her eyes. That's putting it mildly. She throws herself at almost every man. But Marcus is also good, always with a sour expression. Abby listened, but her mind was elsewhere. She pulled out her phone again, opened Instagram, and started scrolling through the comments. Cool photos, someone wrote. Where do you get those tablecloths? Another subscriber asked. But there were only 4 likes. She'd spent an hour on these photos, and the result was worse than some mom with 3 posts. Abby, are you okay? Sophia's voice pulled her out of her thoughts. Abby winced, hiding her phone. Yes, it's fine, she said quickly. It's just hot. Yeah, the heat's getting on everyone's nerves. Caleb wiped his forehead. Nathan, maybe you could get some water. We have bottles in the car. I'm on my way, Nathan saluted as he headed toward their Jeep. He passed Vanessa, who was now smiling at the young couple shopping for a duffel bag. These are original Adidas, she said, her eyes sparkling. $15, and you won't regret it. Marcus stood to the side, looking at her like she was a traitor. He kicked the empty box and walked away to his truck, slamming the door. Vanessa didn't even turn around, continuing to chat with customers. Abby watched, her fingers tightening around her phone. She knew Vanessa was playing with fire, but she couldn't blame her. She felt the same way, trapped in a marriage where Nathan saw her as nothing more than a backdrop to his life. She opened her camera app and began snapping photos of the kids pouring lemonade, trying to distract themselves. Haley, smile, she shouted, but her daughter just rolled her eyes. Mom, stop, Haley muttered. This is stupid. It's not stupid, it's for memory. Abby lowered the phone, feeling her irritation growing. Can you not argue for once? Haley snorted and walked away to Owen, who spilled lemonade on the grass. Abby sighed, walking back to the table. She glanced at Nathan, who had returned with bottles of water and was now chatting with Caleb, laughing about something. His laughter was loud, infectious, but to her, it was empty. Sophia was still standing nearby, sorting books. Abby, if you need help, just let me know, she said, looking at her with a little concern. You're kind of. I don't know, it's quiet today. I'm just tired, Abby forced a smile. The kids, the heat, everything. I understand, Sophia nodded. But you're great. I wouldn't be able to film all day and also supervise the kids. It's not that hard, Abby shrugged, but her voice was flat. She looked at Sophia and Caleb, their easy conversation, and felt out of place. They were a couple who, despite their problems, stuck together. And she and Nathan. They were like 2 trains on different tracks. Nathan returned to the table, handing her a bottle of water. Here, don't die of the heat, he said, grinning. And by the way, I sold the bag for 20. Not bad, huh? Great. Abby took the bottle, but didn't open it. Maybe you could take care of the table then. I want to take more pictures. Filming again? Nathan frowned. Abby, you've been on that phone all day. Help with sales, will you? I help, she raised her voice, drawing Caleb's gaze. It's work, too, Nathan. My posts bring in money. Money? He chuckled. How much is it? $100 a month. You should have given lessons like before. Abby squeezed the bottle so hard the plastic crunched. Don't start, she said quietly. Not here. Nathan opened his mouth, but changed his mind when he noticed Sophia and Caleb looking at them. He shrugged and turned to the new customer, who was looking at the clubs. Hey, buddy, you want the real deal, he began, turning on his charm again. Abby looked away, her throat tightening. She opened Instagram and started to type a new post, but her fingers were shaking. Windsor Road Yard Sale, come join us, she typed, adding an emoji. But inside, she wanted to write something else. I'm tired of pretending everything is okay. Vanessa, having finished with the customers, walked up to their table, her smile bright as neon. Abby, these are great photos, she said, nodding at her phone. You're such a pro. Can you teach me sometime? Abby looked at her, trying to figure out if she was being sincere or just chatting. Thank you, she said. It's not difficult, you just have to shoot a lot. A lot? Vanessa laughed. I'd go crazy. But you look cool in those t-shirts. Where do you get them? At Target, Abby smiled weakly. They're cheap. We should stop by, Vanessa nodded, but her gaze slid to Nathan, who was selling a golf club. Your husband is a master salesman. Is he always so energetic? Abby tensed, catching the hint in her voice. Yes, always, she said dryly. It's his job. I see, Vanessa winked. Okay, I'll run. Marcus is sulking again. I need to calm him down. She walked away, her steps light, almost dancing. Abby watched her go, feeling a mixture of irritation and envy. Vanessa was new, free, full of life. And she was just Abby Walker, whose life revolved around a husband who ignored her. The sale continued. Nathan sold 2 more golf clubs. Caleb and Sophia argued over which book to keep. Vanessa chatted with customers, and Marcus sat in the truck, staring into space. Abby took a dozen more photos, but every single one felt fake. She wanted to go home, but she knew it would only get worse there. Mom, can we go? Haley came up again, her voice irritated. This is boring. Another hour, Abby looked at her. Help Owen with the lemonade, and then we'll decide. Haley rolled her eyes, but walked away. Abby sat on the couch, her legs tucked under her, scrolling through Instagram. Photos from the sale flashed across the screen. The post had 127 likes, better than she expected, but still not enough. She sighed, resting her head on the pillow. The living room was silent, save for the ticking of the clock on the wall and the scratching of Haley's pencil in the bedroom upstairs. Nathan left to meet a new client, promising to be back for dinner, but Abby knew he'd be late. He always was. The last week had been particularly hard. They'd barely spoken, only exchanged brief comments about the kids or the bills. His words at the sale, I wish you'd taught lessons like you used to, still burned like a splinter. She opened her notifications, expecting more comments. Instead, she received a message from Caleb Thompson. Abby frowned, expecting nothing more than a neighborly hello. She opened the chat. Caleb, Abby, great photos from the sale. You're quite the photographer. How do you do it? Abby paused, rereading. Caleb rarely wrote to her, usually only in the neighbors' group chat. She smiled, feeling a little warm at the praise. Abby, thank you. Nothing complicated, just shooting and editing. You could do it too. She sent a reply and immediately regretted writing so dryly. But Caleb responded almost immediately. Caleb, no, I'm like a hammer with a camera, I'll just ruin everything. And you're really talented. Sophia still regrets not buying your vase. Abby laughed. She looked into the kitchen where the vase sat, the blue one with the crack that no one wanted, for $5. Abby, this vase is still gathering dust at my place. If Sophia changes her mind, I'll give it away for free. Caleb, seriously? I'll tell her, but she's in throw everything away mode right now. Half the books in our house are already on the throw-out list. Abby bit her lip, unsure of what to say. She remembered Caleb at the garage sale, his tired eyes, the way he joked with Nathan but seemed distant. She suddenly wanted to ask if he was okay, but she stopped herself. That would be weird. Caleb, by the way, have you read any of the books we sold? I found an old king at my place, but I can't bring myself to start. Abby, King? I love it. I read The Shining 100 years ago, but I still remember it. What do you like? Caleb, well, King is a classic. I also love Tart. Her goldfinch really got me. And you? Abby was surprised. She hadn't expected Caleb to read Tart. He seemed more like a guy who watched football with Nathan than one who was sitting with a thick novel. Abby, the goldfinch, yes, that's strong. I've been more into light books lately, like Colleen Hoover novels. When you have kids and a blog, you can't handle anything serious. Caleb, I understand. My brain switches off after work too. This shopping center is going to kill me. The customer wants to redo everything, and I don't know how to convince him. Abby felt the conversation getting more personal. She glanced at the door, as if Nathan might walk in at any moment, but the house was empty. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, but she wrote anyway. Abby, that sounds tough. Nathan is also always on edge because of work. Sometimes it seems like he doesn't even notice what's going on at home. She sent the message and held her breath. It was too revealing, but Caleb responded quickly. Caleb, yes, I know that feeling. Sophia is all about her campaigns, and I like the background. Sometimes you just want to, I don't know, stop everything and talk like a human being. Abby swallowed, her heart beating faster. She hadn't expected Caleb to be so open. She suddenly wanted to tell him more about how Nathan ignored her, how she felt invisible, how blogging had become her only way of proving her worth. Abby, exactly. I sometimes think that if I stop posting on Instagram, no one will even notice that I exist. It's stupid, I guess. Caleb, nothing is stupid. You're doing a great job, Abby. Your posts are like a window into normal life. Sophia doesn't have that. She only thinks about work. Abby smiled, her cheeks flushing slightly. She pictured Caleb at his desk, with those tired eyes, and suddenly felt like he understood her better than anyone had in years. Mom, can I get a cookie? Owen's voice came from the stairs, and Abby jumped, almost dropping her phone. Yes, take it, but only 2, she shouted, trying to sound calm. And give some to Haley, too. Owen stomped into the kitchen, and Abby returned to the phone. Caleb texted again. Caleb, listen, wouldn't you like to chat over coffee sometime? About books, about life. I'm going crazy with the drawings here. Abby froze. It was just an invitation to meet, nothing special. They were neighbors, friends. But her fingers shook as she typed out her reply. Abby, sounds good. When are you free? Caleb, tomorrow morning, at Bean and Brew on Main Street, around 10 o'clock. Sophia will be at work, and I'm in no hurry to get to the office anyway. Abby, coming. I'm free too. The kids are at school. She sent the message and immediately felt her stomach clench. It was just coffee. No big deal. But then why was she so nervous? Abby, are you home? Nathan's voice came from the hallway, and she almost dropped the phone. Yes, here, she shouted, quickly closing Instagram and getting up from the couch. Nathan walked in, throwing his briefcase on a chair. His shirt was slightly wrinkled, and his face was tired, but he smiled anyway. The client is a complete idiot, he said, opening the refrigerator. He wants to invest $1 million, but he's afraid of every step. It took 3 hours to persuade him. Is there anything to eat? I ordered a pizza, it'll be here soon. Abby walked towards the kitchen, trying to look natural. How was the meeting? Fine. Nathan took out a beer and collapsed on a chair. If he signs the contract, there will be a bonus. And what were you doing? More photos for your blog? Abby tensed, but forced herself to smile. Yes, a little, she said. And I helped the children with their homework. Lessons are good. Nathan took a sip of beer. Otherwise, Haley is always on her phone like you. We need to sign her up for sports, otherwise she'll get too lazy. She's not lazy, Abby raised her voice. She gets good grades, Nathan. Maybe you could talk to her yourself instead of just criticizing her. Oh, here we go, he rolled his eyes. I was just saying, Abby, no need to make a big deal out of it. Abby pressed her lips together and turned away, starting to set the table. She wanted to tell him she was tired of his indifference, of him seeing her only as a housewife, but she didn't say it. Instead, she thought about Caleb's text, about tomorrow's coffee, and felt something inside her spring to life. Meanwhile, Caleb sat in his office, staring at his computer screen, where a blueprint of the mall was open. He hadn't worked for half an hour, still thinking about his text messages to Abby. It was stupid, he knew. She was the wife of Nathan, his best friend. But her words, "No one will notice I exist," had hurt him. He felt the same way. Sophia was consumed by work, their home was full of silence, and the pain of her infertility hung between them like a wall. He opened their chat and reread her last message. Coming. I'm single too. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, but he didn't write anything. Instead, he closed the laptop and rubbed his temples. It was just coffee, just a conversation. But why did he feel like he was doing something wrong? At home, Sophia sat at her laptop, checking reports for a new marketing campaign. Her phone beeped a message from the doctor, a reminder for an appointment tomorrow. She pressed her lips together, closing the notification. Another test, another hope that would likely be dashed. She glanced at the photo on the table, her and Caleb's wedding 10 years ago. They'd laughed then, but now they barely spoke. Caleb, are you coming soon? She called out, not looking up from the screen. Yes, in an hour, he answered from the office over the speakerphone. Order something for dinner, I don't have time. Again? Sophia frowned, but didn't argue. Okay, I'll order sushi. She put the phone down and went back to work, but her mind was elsewhere. She knew Caleb was drifting away, but she couldn't blame him. She wasn't any better. Work had become her refuge from the pain. Vanessa finished her workout at the gym, wiping sweat from her neck. Her clients, a group of middle-aged women, thanked her, but she was barely listening. She thought about Marcus, about his argument at the sale, about the way he looked at her like she was a stranger. She opened her phone and texted him. Vanessa, are you home? I'm finished. Can we talk? The answer came within a minute. Marcus, in the service. It'll be late. There's nothing to talk about. Vanessa clutched her phone, her eyes shining. She wanted to write something harsh, but decided against it. Instead, she opened Instagram and began scrolling through Abby's posts. Her perfect photos, her smile, it all seemed so far removed from reality. Vanessa knew Abby wasn't as happy as she seemed, but she couldn't understand why she cared. Abby put the kids to bed after checking Haley's homework and putting away Owen's toys. Nathan watched the news in the living room, oblivious to her. She went up to the bedroom, lay down, and opened Instagram. The chat with Caleb was still open. She wanted to write something else, but she just closed the app and turned off the light. Tomorrow's coffee was just coffee, she told herself, but she couldn't sleep. Abby sat at a table by the window at Bean and Brew, fiddling with the corner of a paper napkin. The place was bustling with morning activity, baristas calling out names, coffee machines hissing, customers tapping away at laptop keyboards. She glanced at her watch, 10:07. Caleb was late, which made her more nervous than she expected. She straightened her white shirt, checked her phone, no messages, no missed calls. Nathan was in a meeting, as usual, the kids were at school, and here she was in a cafe with her husband's best friend. It was just coffee, she told herself, but her hands were shaking. The door clinked and Caleb walked in. His dark shirt was slightly wrinkled and his hair was disheveled, but he smiled when he saw her. He raised his hand in greeting and made his way to the table, weaving between the occupied tables. "Sorry, Abby, traffic," he said, sitting down opposite her. "I thought I'd make it in time, but Charlotte decided to cause chaos on the roads." "Nothing, I just got here," Abby lied, putting the napkin under her latte. "Did you order anything?" "I'll get it now." Caleb glanced at the counter. "Black coffee, as always. What are you drinking?" "Latte," she pointed to the cup. "With vanilla syrup. Wanted something sweeter today." "Good choice," he smiled, but his eyes were tired. "Wait a minute, I'll order and come back." Abby nodded, watching him walk toward the counter. Caleb moved calmly, but there was a tension in his shoulders, as if he were carrying an invisible weight. She turned to the window, watching the people passing by. Main Street was bustling with activity, cars honking, bicyclists weaving between pedestrians, and a busker playing guitar across the street. It was a normal Tuesday, but to her, nothing felt right. Caleb returned with a mug of black coffee and sat down, taking a sip straight away. "Well, now I'm a man," he said, putting his mug on the table. "So what were we talking about yesterday? Books, huh?" Abby forced herself to smile, even though her heart was pounding. "Yes, you mentioned Tart," she said. "I never finished The Goldfinch. It's too long." "It's long, but it's worth it," Caleb nodded. "Although I'm not reading anything serious right now either, mostly staring at blueprints and trying not to go crazy." "This is your mall?" Abby raised an eyebrow. "You wrote yesterday that the customer was annoying." "He's annoying, to say the least," Caleb sighed, rubbing his neck. "He wants everything to be perfect, but he doesn't want to pay. We spent 3 hours arguing about parking yesterday." "Parking. I'm already thinking maybe I should just forget about this project." "Don't give up." Abby leaned in a little closer. "You love your job. It's obvious from the way you talk about it." "I loved it," he corrected, looking into his mug. "It used to be about creativity. Now it's all a compromise. And at home, well, at home it's no better either." Abby froze, not expecting him to bring up something personal. She wanted to ask what was wrong, but she was afraid to cross the line. Instead, she said, "I understand. It's the same with Nathan. He's all about his clients, and I'm like, I don't know, like the furniture in the house." Caleb looked at her, his gaze softening. "Furniture. Abby, are you serious? You do a lot of stuff. The kids, the blog, the house. Nathan should appreciate that." "He should, but he doesn't appreciate it." She smiled bitterly, swirling her spoon in her latte. "Yesterday, he said again that my blog is crap, that I'm wasting my time when I could go back to teaching." "He really said that?" Caleb frowned. "That's not fair. Your blog is yours. I've looked at your posts, they're cool. People love them." Abby blushed, not expecting such praise. "Thank you," she said quietly. "But sometimes it feels like I'm just doing this for the likes, for someone to notice. Silly, right?" "Nothing is stupid," Caleb shook his head. "We all want to be noticed. For example, sometimes I feel invisible. Sophia, she's so goal-oriented, all about her work, about her plans, and it's like I'm in the way." Abby swallowed, feeling the conversation veering into the danger zone. She looked at him, his tired eyes, his tight lips, and suddenly realized he was as lonely as she was. "Are you and Sophia okay?" she asked carefully. "Well, I mean, you always seem so, together." "Together?" Caleb laughed bitterly. "We're together, but we don't talk. She wants a baby, and I don't know how to help her. Every visit to the doctor is a blow, and I blame myself for not being able to fix it." Abby was silent, unsure of what to say. She had never thought that Caleb and Sophia would have such problems. They seemed like the perfect couple, no kids, but with a career, a house, plans. "I'm sorry," she finally said. "This must be hard, for both of you." "It's hard," Caleb nodded, sipping his coffee. And what about you and Nathan? You wrote yesterday that he doesn't notice you. Has it been like this for a long time? Abby looked out the window, gathering her thoughts. She didn't want to reveal everything, but his openness was appealing. 5 years, probably, she said, her voice quieter. Since I left school, he said he supported me then, but now I see he just wanted me to stay home. And the blog, he tolerates it, but he thinks it's a toy. And sometimes I think he's right. He's wrong. Caleb leaned closer, his voice firmer. You're talented, Abby. You're doing something of your own, and that's cool. Don't let him take that away from you. Abby looked at him, her eyes shining. No one had said that to her in years. Nathan only complimented her on dinner or a clean house, and here was Caleb, who saw more in her. Thank you, she whispered, looking down. You don't know how important this is. They fell silent, but the silence wasn't awkward, it was warm. The coffee was getting cold, and the cafe was still humming around them. Abby felt something shift inside her, as if someone had opened a window in a stuffy room. How about some more coffee? Caleb suggested, gesturing at her empty cup. No, that's enough for me, she smiled. But I want to sit a little longer, if you're not in a hurry. I'm not in a hurry, he leaned back in his chair. Tell me how you started the blog. I don't know anything about it. Abby relaxed as she began to talk about her first posts, learning how to take pictures, how happy she was to get every like. Caleb listened, asked questions, and she felt alive for the first time in a long time. They talked about books, about kids, about how Charlotte had changed in recent years. The conversation turned to laughter when Caleb told of the time he got stuck in the elevator at work, and Abby shared a story about Owen spilling paint all over the garage. The hour flew by. Caleb looked at his watch and sighed. I guess I should go, he said. The blueprints don't draw themselves. But that was cool, Abby. Haven't blabbed like that in a long time. Yes, me too, she nodded, feeling a little sad. We should do it again sometime. Of course, he smiled, standing up. Come on, I'll walk you to the car. They paid for the coffee and walked outside. The heat hit her face, but Abby didn't care. She walked next to Caleb, their shoulders almost touching. Her car, a silver SUV, was across the street, and they pulled up next to it. Well, see you later, Caleb said, putting his hands in his pockets. Right, if anything happens. Sure. Abby opened the door, but hesitated. She looked at him, his dark eyes, his easy smile, and suddenly felt a rush. Caleb, thank you. For today, you don't know how much this helped. He stepped closer, his voice becoming quieter. Thank you too, Abby. Me too. I needed this. They stood there, silent, too close. Abby knew she should get in the car and drive away, but she couldn't. Caleb leaned in, and she didn't pull away. Their lips met, briefly, fiercely, as if they were both afraid this was their last chance. The kiss lasted only a second, but Abby felt the world around her stop. They both recoiled at the same time, both in shock. Abby pressed her hand to her lips, her eyes widening. Oh God, what are we doing? She whispered. I'm sorry, Caleb stepped back, rubbing his face. It was a mistake. We shouldn't have. Yeah, it was a mistake, Abby nodded, her voice shaking. Let's forget it, okay? Just forget it. Sure, he swallowed, avoiding her gaze. I'll go. See you later. He turned and walked quickly to his car, parked down the street. Abby climbed into the driver's seat, slamming the door behind her. Her hand shook as she gripped the steering wheel. It was just a kiss, no big deal, she told herself. No one would know. She started the engine and pulled out onto the road, unaware that Vanessa Cruz's black pickup had pulled up around the corner. Vanessa was driving to practice when she spotted Abby's SUV outside the coffee shop. She slowed down when she saw Abby and Caleb getting out together. Her eyebrows shot up. She knew Sophia was at work and Nathan was always busy. When they kissed, Vanessa gasped, grabbing her phone. She snapped a few quick pictures, her fingers shaking with excitement. This wasn't just gossip, it was dynamite. She looked at the photo. Abby and Caleb, their faces close, his hand on her shoulder. Vanessa pressed her lips together, thinking. She could send it to Sophia or show it to Marcus to distract him from their fight. But something stopped her. She knew it would ruin everything, and she wasn't sure she was ready for that. She put her phone away and moved on, but the photos sat in her gallery like a loaded gun. At home, Abby dropped her bag on the couch and collapsed into a kitchen chair. She could still taste the kiss, the warmth of it on her lips. It was wrong, she knew. Nathan, Sophia, the kids, they were all screaming at her to forget. But part of her didn't want to forget. She opened Instagram, but didn't text Caleb. Instead, she started making dinner, trying to block out the thoughts. Nathan returned late, as always, smelling of coffee and fatigue. "Abby, I'm home," he called, throwing his keys on the table. "What's for dinner?" "Lasagna," she answered, without turning away from the stove. "The children have already eaten." "Great." He sat down at the table, opening a beer. "It's been a hell of a day. The client changed his mind again. How about you?" "It's fine," she lied, placing the plate in front of him. "Just like any other day." He nodded, ignoring the strain in her voice, and turned on the TV. Abby looked at him, his impassive face, and felt guilt mingle with something new, a desire she couldn't explain. Caleb parked outside the house, but didn't get out of the car. He sat there, looking out at the empty street, replaying the kiss in his head. It was a mistake, he knew. Abby was Nathan's wife, his friend. But her words, her look, all of it stirred something in him that he'd buried long ago. He pulled out his phone, opened their chat, but didn't text. Instead, he walked out and into the house, where Sophia was sitting with her laptop. "You're late," Withshes said, without looking up from the screen. "Dinner's in the fridge." "Thank you." Caleb threw the keys on the table and walked into the kitchen, trying not to think about what he had just done. Vanessa returned home after training, dropping her bag by the door. Marcus was at the service station, and the house was empty. She opened her phone, looked at the photo of Abby and Caleb again. Her finger hovered over the send button, but she closed the gallery. For now, she would keep quiet, she decided. But that for now was fragile. Abby pulled into the Sunrise Motel on the outskirts of Charlotte, 20 miles off Windsor Road. The building was old and peeling, but discreet, perfect for keeping her silver SUV from being recognized. She glanced in the rearview mirror, smoothed her hair, and took a deep breath. Her phone was on the passenger seat, the screen glowing with a text from Caleb, "Room 214. I'm here." She stepped out of the car, clutching her bag, and walked quickly to the stairs, avoiding the gazes of the few other guests. Her heart was pounding, not from fear, but from anticipation. This was wrong, she knew, but she couldn't stop. Caleb had become her refuge, the only one who saw her as more than a wife and mother. In room 214, Caleb was waiting, sitting on the edge of the bed. His shirt was undone at the top button, his hair was disheveled. He stood up when she entered and smiled, but his eyes were tired. "You made it," he said, closing the door behind her. "I thought you'd change your mind." "Me too." Abby threw her bag on the chair and stepped toward him. "But here I am." They didn't speak. Caleb pulled her close, and their lips met, fiercely, as if it were the last time. Abby clutched at his shirt, forgetting about Nathan, about the kids, about everything. It didn't last long, but every moment was like a breath of air after a long dive. When they pulled away, Abby sat on the bed, breathing heavily, adjusting her blouse. Caleb collapsed next to her, staring at the ceiling. "What we're doing is wrong," he said quietly, "but I don't want to stop." "Me too." Abby looked at him, her voice shaking. It's like I'm alive again." Caleb turned his head, his gaze serious. "You've always been alive, Abby. Nathan just can't see it." She swallowed, guilt rising. She'd lied to Nathan about going on a blog shoot, the third lie she'd told him this week. Her encounters with Caleb had started after that kiss outside the cafe. First in the park outside town, where they'd kissed under the oak trees, then in his office after work, where he'd locked the door and pinned her to the desk. Now this motel. Each time they'd sworn it was their last, but each time they'd come back. "What about Sophia?" Abby asked, fiddling with the edge of the sheet. "She doesn't notice?" Caleb sighed, rubbing his face. She, she's busy. Doctors, work, all that. But yesterday she asked why I came back late. I said I was delayed with the project. She believed me, but I don't know for how long. Abby nodded, her thoughts returning to Nathan. He didn't ask questions, too preoccupied with his clients, but his coldness had become even more noticeable. He hadn't even asked where she had been yesterday, just been glued to his phone over dinner. "Nathan doesn't even notice," she said, her voice empty. "Sometimes I think I could go away for a week, and he wouldn't blink." "He's an idiot." Caleb took her hand, squeezing her fingers. "You deserve better." Abby looked down at their intertwined hands, feeling the warmth of his skin. It was dangerous, but it was that warmth that kept her here. "We have to be careful," she said. "If anyone finds out." "No one will know." Caleb leaned down, kissing her forehead. "We're careful. It's ours alone." She nodded, but something in her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, but she knew that the lie couldn't last forever. At home, Nathan sat in the living room, scrolling through reports on his laptop. Haley and Owen were upstairs doing homework, and Abby still hadn't returned. He looked at his watch. 4:30 p.m. She'd said she was filming content for her blog, but he couldn't remember where. It didn't matter to him her blog was a waste of time, but he was used to it. "Haley, come down," he shouted, closing the laptop. "You can help with dinner." Haley appeared on the stairs, rolling her eyes. "Dad, I'm doing algebra," she said, adjusting her baseball cap. "Why is it always me?" "Because Owen's going to spill half the sauce." Nathan stood up, heading to the kitchen. "Come on, grab some ground beef and let's make tacos." Haley sighed, but followed him. They started cooking, and Nathan tried to get her to talk. "How's school?" he asked, chopping onions. "Is the math teacher still a beast?" "It's fine," Haley shrugged, opening a can of beans. "He's not a beast, just a bore. How's your job?" "Same as usual," Nathan chuckled. "The clients think I'm a wizard, and I'm just trying not to go broke. Where's Mom, by the way?" "She's filming something." Haley threw the mince into the pan. "She's always somewhere when you're home." Nathan frowned but said nothing. He hadn't noticed Abby disappearing so often, but Haley's words had stung. He pulled out his phone to text her, but thought better of it. Instead, he said, "Okay, let's cook. If Mom is late, we'll start without her." Sophia sat in her office, reviewing a presentation for a client. Her phone beeped, a reminder for her next doctor's appointment. She pressed her lips together, swiping the notification away. The latest test had shown her chances of pregnancy were slim again, and it was killing her. She glanced at the photo of Caleb on her desk, their trip to the mountains 3 years ago. They'd been happy then, and now. Caleb came home later than he'd promised, citing work again. Yesterday, she'd noticed him quickly put his phone away when she'd walked into the room. It was a small thing, but her gut was screaming that something was wrong. "Caleb, are you home?" she called out as she heard the door slam. "Yes," his voice was tired. He walked into the living room, throwing his bag on the sofa. "Long day. Anything to eat?" "The salad is in the fridge." Sophia looked at him, crossing her arms. "You're late again. Is this project that important?" Caleb froze, but nodded quickly. "Yes, the client is pressing," he said, avoiding her gaze. "We need to finish the drawings by Friday." "I see," Sophia narrowed her eyes. "You've been kind of, I don't know, different lately. Is everything okay?" "It's okay," he forced himself to smile. "I'm just tired. I'll go eat." He went into the kitchen, and Sophia stood there, feeling her suspicions growing. She had known Caleb for 10 years. He was never good at lying. She pulled out her phone and opened their shared calendar, checking his schedule. Nothing out of the ordinary, but it only made her more anxious. Abby got home at 6, clutching her phone with a new post on it. a photo of the sunset at the park where she'd been with Caleb 2 days earlier. She'd posted it with the caption, "Catching inspiration," so Nathan wouldn't get suspicious. In the living room, Owen was watching cartoons, Haley was scrolling through her phone, and Nathan was sitting at the table with a plate of tacos. "Where have you been?" he asked, not looking up from his food. "Haley said you were filming." "Yeah, in the park." Abby threw her bag on a chair. "For the blog, it turned out pretty good." "Yeah," Nathan nodded, but his voice was indifferent. "Dinner's on the table if you want." "Thank you," she said, walking into the kitchen, the lie burning in her throat. She grabbed a plate, but she didn't feel like eating. Instead, she opened Instagram and saw a new message from Caleb. "Caleb, today was, I don't know how to say it. Are you okay?" Abby's fingers tightened around her phone, frozen. She wanted to write the truth that she was scared but happy, that she couldn't stop thinking about him. But instead she wrote, "Abby, I'm fine. You too?" "Caleb, I'm trying. Friday." She looked at Nathan, who was now watching the news, and replied, "Abby, yes, right where?" She closed the chat and put her phone away, but her heart was beating faster. This wasn't just a connection, it was an escape, and she didn't know how to stop. Vanessa sat in her gym, checking her workout schedule. Marcus hadn't called since the morning, and it was making her angry. She opened her gallery and looked at the photo of Abby and Caleb again. Her finger hovered over the share button, but she stopped. Did she have the right to ruin other people's lives? Marcus stumbled into the house, slamming the door so hard that the glass vase on the shelf shook. His black t-shirt was soaked with sweat and oil, his face flushed with heat and anger. He dropped his tool bag on the floor and headed into the kitchen, where Vanessa stood at the sink, pouring water into a sports bottle. Her tight leggings and bright top accentuated her figure, which only increased Marcus's irritation. "Are you going to the gym again?" he barked, opening the fridge. "It's Friday night, and you're still going there." Vanessa turned around, her dark hair pulled back into a high ponytail. She set the bottle down on the table and crossed her arms. "Yes, I have training," she said, her voice cold. "It's my job, Marcus. Or have you forgotten?" "Work." He slammed the fridge shut, holding a bottle of beer. "You don't work there, but you make eyes at every jock. I stopped by today and saw you giggling with that blonde guy." Vanessa rolled her eyes, but her cheeks flushed. "Seriously, Marcus?" She took a step toward him, hands on her hips. "It was a client, Jake. I'm training him, that's all. Stop making this up." "Make things up?" Marcus pointed a finger at her, his voice growing louder. "I'm not blind, Vanessa. You practically hugged him. Do you think I don't see how you throw yourself at everyone? Hang myself?" She raised her voice, her eyes flashing. "It's my job, damn it. I have to be friendly so people come back. And all you do is accuse me of cheating." Marcus gripped the bottle so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Because you give me a reason," he barked. "At the sale, at the gym, it's all the same. I'm not an idiot, Vanessa. Who are you hanging out with?" Vanessa froze, her face pale with hurt. She hated these fights, but today something inside her snapped. She grabbed her phone from the table and opened the gallery, where the photo of Abby and Caleb outside the cafe was stored. "You want to know who's cheating?" she hissed, shoving the phone under his nose. "Here, look. Your perfect neighbor Abby and Caleb. I caught them a couple weeks ago. It wasn't me, Marcus. It was them." Marcus stared at the screen, his jaw tense. The photo was clear. Abby and Caleb, their faces close, his hand on her shoulder, his lips almost touching. He exhaled slowly, pulling the phone away. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice quieter but still furious. "Abby and Caleb, are you sure?" "I'm sure." Vanessa snatched the phone back. "I saw them at Bean and Brew. They came out of the cafe and kissed right next to her car. So don't blame me when other people do it behind their backs." Marcus stood silently, his eyes glued to the floor. He'd known Caleb for years. He and Nathan were best friends, drinking beer on weekends, talking about cars. And Abby, She was Nathan's wife, his mother, the blogger with her silly posts. It didn't make sense. "You didn't show it to anyone?" he asked, finally looking up. "No," Vanessa crossed her arms. "But I could. Sophia or Nathan have a right to know. I'm only keeping quiet because, I don't know, I don't want to be the one to ruin everything." "Destroy it," Marcus snorted, but his voice was tense. "If that's true, they destroyed it themselves. But I don't believe it. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe it's not what it seems." "Wrong." Vanessa laughed, but it was bitter. "The photo lies? I saw them, Marcus. They weren't just chatting. It wasn't a friendly kiss." Marcus shook his head, his face darkening. "I'll figure it out," he said, setting his beer down on the table. "If you're right, it's cheating. But if you're lying to distract yourself, I won't forgive you." "Lying?" Vanessa took a step toward him, her voice shaking. "I showed you the truth, and you're still going to bully me. You know what, Marcus? I'm tired. Go watch Abby if you want, but leave me alone." She grabbed the bottle and bag and stormed out of the kitchen, slamming the door. Marcus stood there, clenching his fists. He didn't believe Vanessa, not entirely. She could have been exaggerating to steer the conversation away from herself. But the photo was real, and it burned him like acid. He pulled out his phone and texted his partner at the service station. "Marcus, take the morning shift tomorrow. I'm busy." He decided to keep an eye on Abby. If Vanessa was wrong, he would prove her wrong. If not, he didn't know what he would do. The next day, Marcus parked his black pickup truck 2 blocks from the Walker house. It was 7 in the morning, the street was still asleep, only the school bus blared on the corner. He watched as Haley and Owen ran out to the bus stop and Nathan drove away in his BMW. Abby came out half an hour later, wearing jeans and a white t-shirt, carrying a purse over her shoulder. She got into her SUV and drove toward downtown. Marcus followed her, keeping his distance. His heart was pounding. He felt like a detective in a cheap movie, but he wasn't going to back down. Abby pulled up to a park on the outskirts of town where locals rarely went. Marcus parked behind the trees, watching. 5 minutes later, Caleb's gray sedan pulled up. He got out, looked back, and walked over to Abby, who was waiting by a bench. They hugged, briefly, but too close for friends. Marcus gripped the steering wheel, his breathing quickening. He pulled out his phone and began filming, his hands shaking. Abby and Caleb sat on a bench, their heads closed, Caleb talking, and she smiling. Then they stood up, linked arms, and walked toward the trees, where they were hidden in shadow. Marcus lowered his phone, his face pale. This was not a friendly conversation. Vanessa hadn't lied. He replayed the video. It was short but clear. The hug, their closeness, their departure. It was a bomb, and he held it in his hands. "Shit," he muttered, leaning back in his seat. "What now?" He didn't know who to show the video to, Nathan, Sophia, or no one. He wanted to prove Vanessa wrong, but now the truth was hitting him in the face. He started the engine and drove to the garage, but his thoughts were spinning around the same thing. This wasn't just betrayal, this was betrayal of everyone on Windsor Road. Abby got home by noon, her cheeks flushed from her morning meeting. Caleb had been gentle, whispering that she was special, and had made her forget about the wine, if only for an hour. She opened Instagram, posted a photo of the park with the caption, "Morning inspiration," and checked the likes. Her lie was getting easier, but her heart ached at the thought of Nathan. Nathan was in a meeting but called during lunch. "Abby, I'll be late," he said, his voice businesslike. "A client wants to discuss a portfolio. Can you handle the kids?" "Sure," she replied, trying to sound normal. "See you tonight." Yeah, he hung up without asking where she had been. Abby looked at her phone, her fingers hovering over the chat with Caleb. She wrote, "Abby, today was, thank you. When again?" Caleb, "Soon. All right. Be careful." She smiled, but the smile quickly faded. Caution was their weak point. Sophia sat in the doctor's office, listening to more results. Her chances of getting pregnant hadn't improved, and that was like a knife. She returned home, But Caleb was gone, the project again. She opened his laptop, hoping to find something about work, but instead noticed a tab for a park he hadn't been to. Her suspicions grew stronger. "Caleb, we need to talk," she muttered, closing the laptop. Vanessa led the workout, but her thoughts were with Marcus. She knew the photo of Abby and Caleb had shaken him, but she hadn't expected him to start stalking them. She wanted to apologize for the fight, but his silence was frightening. The rusty anchor was packed. Neon signs flashed above the bar, rock music blared from the speakers, and the smell of beer and fried chicken wings permeated the air. Nathan Walker stood at the bar, holding a beer and laughing loudly with his neighbor. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the top, and his smile was like a winner's. "To the best quarter of my career," he shouted, raising the bottle. "And to you guys, the best neighbors in Charlotte." The crowd applauded, and a few whistled. Abby sat at a table in the corner, sipping a margarita. She tried to smile, but her eyes kept drifting to Caleb, who was standing at the pool table with Sophia. Their eyes met for a second, and she quickly looked away, clutching her glass. "Abby, why are you so quiet?" Vanessa plopped down next to her, her bright top sparkling under the lights. "It's a party, relax." "I'm just tired," Abby forced a smile. "Oh yeah, I know." Vanessa sipped her drink, her gaze sharp. "But you look like you're hiding a secret." Abby tensed, but laughed, waving it off. "A secret? Only if it's a new Instagram filter." Vanessa chuckled, but didn't press the issue. She glanced at Marcus, who was sitting at the bar, frowning into his whiskey. He'd barely spoken to her since their fight, and it irritated her more than she cared to admit. At the pool table, Sophia was swaying, holding her third glass of wine. Her eyes were red, and her makeup was slightly smudged. Caleb stood next to her, trying to calm her down. "Sophia, maybe that's enough," he said quietly, touching her shoulder. "Let's go home." "Home?" She turned sharply, her voice louder than necessary. "Why?" "To sit and say nothing. I'm tired, Caleb. Tired of everything." Caleb pressed his lips together, looking around. Several of the neighbors glanced in their direction, but quickly looked away. He took her hand, but she pulled away. "Don't touch me," she screamed, spilling wine on the floor. "You're not even trying to understand." Nathan noticed the noise and came over, his smile turning to concern. "Hey, Sophia, what's wrong?" he asked, stepping between her and Caleb. "Is everything okay?" Sophia looked at him, her eyes filling with tears. "It's not okay," she muttered, her voice shaking. I can't have kids, Nathan. And he won't even talk to me about it." Nathan froze, not expecting this. He glanced at Caleb, who stood with his head down. "Sophia, let's sit down," Nathan said softly, leading her to a chair. "You're not alone, okay? We're all here for you." Abby watched from the corner, her fingers tightening around her glass. Nathan wrapped his arm around Sophia's shoulders, whispering something, and she buried her face in his shirt, sobbing. Abby felt a sting, not pity, but something sharp, like envy. Nathan had never been like this with her, never held her, never told her she wasn't alone. She glanced at Caleb, who had moved toward the counter, and their eyes met again. He looked lost, and she wanted to go over, but Vanessa was still sitting there. "It's a tough scene, isn't it?" Vanessa said, nodding at Sophia. "I didn't know they were having such problems." "Yeah," Abby looked away. "It's horrible." "Yeah," Vanessa finished her drink. "But you know, sometimes that's not the only problem. Sometimes people are hiding something else." Abby swallowed, feeling her heart skip a beat. Did Vanessa know, or was this just a hint? Before she could answer, Marcus came over to their table, his eyes clouded with whiskey. "Abby, can I talk to you for a second?" he said, his voice low, almost threatening. "Me?" Abby frowned, standing up. "Did something happen?" "Let's go." Marcus nodded towards the exit. "We need to talk." Vanessa looked at him, her eyebrows rising. "Marcus, you're drunk," she said sharply. "Leave her alone." "It's none of your business." He gave her a look full of anger. "Sit here." Abby reluctantly followed him to the door, feeling everyone watching. At the exit, Marcus stopped, turning to face her. "I know you're not who you seem," he said, his words slightly slurred. "You and Caleb. I saw you." Abby froze, her face turning pale. "What are you talking about?" she asked, trying to sound calm. "We're friends, Marcus. You're getting something mixed up." "Friends?" he snorted, stepping closer. "I'm not blind, Abby. In the park, by the bench. You weren't just chatting." Her heart began to pound, but she forced herself to laugh. "You're drunk," she said, stepping back. "Go home, Marcus. You're talking nonsense." He opened his mouth to answer, but Nathan appeared next to him, his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Hey, brother, what's all the noise?" he asked, his voice firm. "Why are you picking on my wife?" Marcus looked at Nathan, his eyes narrowed. "Your wife," he began, but fell silent, clenching his fists. "Ask her where she is when you're at work." Nathan frowned, turning to Abby. "What the hell is this?" he asked. "Abby, what is he talking about?" "He's drunk." Abby shook her head, her voice shaking. "Don't listen to him, Nathan. He doesn't know what he's saying." Nathan looked at Marcus, then at Abby, but nodded. "Okay, Marcus, sober up," he said, leading Abby back to the table. "And don't talk nonsense." Marcus remained standing, his gaze boring into Abby's back. He wanted to show Nathan the video from the park, but something stopped him, maybe the whiskey, maybe the fear that it would blow everything up. He returned to the bar, ordering another drink. Abby sat up, her hands shaking. Vanessa looked at her, but said nothing. Sophia was still crying at Nathan's. Caleb stood to the side, looking at the floor. The party was still going on, but for Abby, it was a trap. Sophia sat on the living room couch, clutching a glass of water, even though she wanted something stronger. Her headache from the wine at the bar last night and the shame of her breakdown in front of the neighbors burned like an open wound. She could still hear her voice screaming about infertility, and she could see Nathan's face as he consoled her. But most of all, Caleb tormented her, his detachment, his quick glances at his phone, his lies about projects. Today, he had gone to the office again, even though it was Saturday. Caleb walked into the house around 7, dropping his bag by the door. His shirt was wrinkled, and his eyes avoided hers. "Where have you been?" Sophia asked, not getting up from the sofa. Her voice was calm, but there was a hint of steel in it. "In the office," Caleb shrugged, heading for the kitchen. "I had some plans to finish. Want me to order some pizza?" "Blueprints." Sophia put her glass down on the table, her eyebrows rising. "On Saturday? Are you serious?" Caleb stood frozen by the refrigerator, holding a bottle of water. "Yes, Sophia, seriously," he said, his voice irritated. "The client is pressuring me, I told you." She stood up, crossed her arms, and stepped towards him. "You've told me a lot of things." Her voice grew louder. "But I'm not stupid, Caleb. You've been disappearing somewhere for the whole month, lying about work, hiding your phone. What's going on?" Caleb squeezed the bottle, his face tightening. "Nothing's happening," he said, looking at the floor. "I'm just busy. You know how it is." "Do I know?" Sophia laughed, but the laugh was bitter. "I know you're lying. Yesterday at the bar, you didn't even try to support me. You just stood there like a stranger. I tried." He raised his voice, turning to her. "But you were drunk and yelling at everyone. What was I supposed to do?" "Talk to me." She stepped closer, her eyes flashing. "And not keep quiet, like you don't care. What's wrong with you, Caleb? Are you seeing someone?" Caleb opened his mouth, but the word stuck. He turned away, setting the bottle on the table. "This is nonsense," he muttered. "I have no one. You're making this up." "Making it up?" Sophia grabbed his phone from the couch where he'd left it. "Then let's check." "Sophia, give it back." Caleb lunged at her, but she had already unlocked the screen. The password hadn't changed in years. She opened the messages, her fingers shaking. At the top was a chat with Abby Walker, the last message from yesterday. "Tomorrow at the park, 10 a.m. Sophia froze, her face pale. She scrolled through the chat dozens of messages, short but too personal. Are you okay after the bar? I need to see you. Nathan is oblivious again. She looked up at Caleb, her voice shaking. What's this? She asked, holding up her phone. Abby, you're with Abby. Is this friendship, Caleb? Caleb clenched his fists, his face a mixture of panic and anger. Yes, friendship, he said, his voice hoarse. We're just chatting, Sophia, about books, about life. Nothing like that. Chatting, she threw the phone on the couch, her voice rising to a scream. You're lying to my face. I need to see you. That's not friendship, Caleb. Are you sleeping with her? No. He took a step towards her, his eyes wide. Oh my God, Sophia, no. We're friends. She's tired, too, like me. She's having problems with Nathan. We support each other. Do you support me? Sophia stepped back, her hands shaking. You think I'll believe you? Abby, your best friend's wife? You're hanging out in parks with her while I'm sitting at the doctor's hoping for a miracle. Caleb rubbed his face, his voice becoming quieter. That's not true, he said. We're just talking. I'm not sleeping with her, I swear. You swear? She stepped closer, her eyes full of tears. Then why are you hiding your phone? Why are you lying about work? I know you, Caleb. You can't lie. He was silent, looking at the floor. Sophia waited, but his silence was louder than any words. She wiped away her tears, her voice became cold. I don't know what's between you, she said, but I'm not stupid. If you don't tell me the truth, I'll find out myself, and then it will be worse for you. She turned and walked into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. Caleb stood there, breathing hard. He knew Sophia wouldn't stop. He picked up his phone, opened a chat with Abby, and wrote, Caleb, Sophia saw our messages. She thinks we have something. We need to be careful. He sent the message and collapsed on the couch, covering his face with his hands. The lie was his shield, but it was cracking, and he didn't know how long it would last. Meanwhile, Abby was sitting in her kitchen, making dinner. Nathan was in the living room watching football. Haley and Owen were doing their homework. Her phone beeped, and she saw Caleb's text. Her heart sank. She quickly wrote, Abby, oh my God, what does she know? Did you tell her something? Caleb, he didn't say anything. He said we were friends. But she doesn't believe him. Abby, we have to stop. It's too dangerous. Abby clutched her phone, her fingers shaking. Stop? She wanted to, but the thought of losing Caleb was unbearable. He was the only one who understood her. She wrote, Abby, I can't. Not now. Let's meet tomorrow. Talk. Please. She sent the message and put her phone away as Nathan walked into the kitchen. Is dinner soon? He asked, opening the refrigerator. I'm hungry. In 10 minutes, she replied without turning around. The pasta is almost ready. Great. He took the beer and left, not noticing her tense face. Abby stared at the boiling water, feeling the truth creeping closer. Sophia knew too much, and Marcus at the bar had been too close to revealing everything. She didn't know how long she could lie. Sophia lay in her bedroom, staring at the ceiling. Her tears had dried, but the pain remained. She remembered Abby's texts, her name on Caleb's phone, and it cut her like a knife. She didn't want to believe that Caleb was capable of cheating on her, but indicated this. She picked up her phone and opened Vanessa's contact. Vanessa, she muttered, you always see everything. She wrote a message. Sophia, are you free tomorrow? We need to talk. About Abby and Caleb. She sent it away and closed her eyes, knowing it could ruin everything. But she couldn't live in ignorance any longer. The middle school auditorium was buzzing with the voices of parents and students. Plastic chairs creaked, children ran up and down the aisles, and on stage the orchestra tuned its instruments, blaring violins and clarinets. Abby Walker sat in the fourth row, clutching her phone to record Haley's performance. Her blue blouse was tucked neatly into her pants, but her fingers fiddled nervously with the strap of her purse. She knew Caleb and Sophia were somewhere behind her, and she tried her best not to look back. Nathan sat nearby, leafing through the concert program. His gray shirt was slightly wrinkled, but he was smiling as he chatted with his neighbor. His mind was unsettled, however Marcus's words at the bar, "Ask her where she hangs out," were haunting him. He glanced at Abby, who was staring at the stage, her face tense. "Haley when?" Nathan asked, leaning toward her. "Soon after choir," Abby answered, still glued to her phone. "She's playing a solo." "Cool," Nathan nodded, but his gaze lingered on her. Something was wrong, and he could feel it. Caleb sat next to Sophia in the back, his hands in his lap. Sophia, in a dark green dress, looked composed, but her eyes were cold. Ever since the argument over Abby's texts, she'd been watching Caleb like a hawk. He tried not to look at Abby, but their eyes met when she fixed her hair. It was a moment, but Nathan noticed. "Are you looking for something?" he asked, his voice sharp. Abby turned to face him with a start. "No, just checking my phone," she said, her smile strained. "I want this to look good for Haley." Nathan chuckled, but his jaw was tense. He looked up at the stage, where the choir had begun singing "America the Beautiful," but his mind was elsewhere. Marcus and Vanessa were sitting 5 rows away. Marcus, in a black t-shirt, looked sullen, his eyes darting between Abby and Caleb. Vanessa, in a red blouse, was whispering to him to calm down, but he wasn't listening. Videos from the park and photos from the cafe were burning up his phone, and the anger that had been building since their argument was exploding. "I can't stand this," he muttered, leaning toward Vanessa. "They're sitting there like nothing happened, and Nathan's blind." "Marcus, shut up," Vanessa squeezed his hand, her voice quiet but firm. "Not here. You'll ruin everything." "Ruin it?" He pulled his hand away, his eyes flashing. "They've already ruined it. Nathan needs to know the truth." Vanessa pressed her lips together, her face turning pale. She knew Marcus was on the edge, but she couldn't stop him. Haley walked onto the stage, her flute clear, the melody of "Ode to Joy" filling the room. Abby held up her phone, filming, but her thoughts were on Caleb. She could feel his eyes on her, and it made her heart pound. Nathan clapped, but his eyes caught Caleb again, who was looking at Abby longer than necessary. When Haley finished, the crowd erupted in applause. Abby stood up to walk backstage, her face alight with pride, but inside she was on edge. "I'm with you," Nathan said, standing up. His tone was oddly harsh. "I want to congratulate her myself." "Okay," Abby nodded, feeling her throat tighten as they headed for the side exit, pushing through the crowd. Marcus stood up, ignoring Vanessa's protests. "I'm going after him," he said, walking toward the exit. "It's time to finish this." "Marcus, don't you dare." Vanessa tried to grab him, but he broke free, disappearing into the crowd. In the dressing room, Haley was laughing with her friends, her face beaming. Abby walked in and hugged her daughter, whispering that she was doing a great job. Caleb followed, ostensibly to congratulate Haley, but his eyes were searching for Abby. They retreated to the far wall while Haley chatted with her friends. "Sophia almost knows," Caleb whispered, his voice hoarse. "We have to stop, Abby." "I'm trying," Abby squeezed his hand, her eyes full of panic. "But I don't want to lose you." Their fingers intertwined, too close. Nathan walked into the dressing room, but froze when he saw them. His face darkened as Abby pulled her hand away. At that moment, Marcus burst in, his eyes blazing with anger. "Nathan, stop being blind," he shouted, thrusting the phone into his hands. On the screen was a photo from the cafe. Abby and Caleb, their faces close, his hand on her shoulder. Nathan stared at the photo, his breathing heavy. He looked at Abby, then at Caleb, his fists clenching. "What's this?" he barked, stepping toward Abby. "Explain it, right now." Abby turned pale and her voice trembled. "Nathan, it's nothing," she began. "We were just talking." "Were you talking?" Nathan turned to Caleb, his voice growing louder. "Are you with my wife? Answer me, Caleb." Caleb raised his hands, retreating. "Nathan, calm down," he said, his voice shaking. It's not what you think. We're friends. Friends? Nathan grabbed him by the collar of his shirt and pushed him against the wall, but stopped himself from hitting him. That's friendship, right? Nathan, stop it. Abby rushed towards him, her eyes filling with tears. Not here, please. Haley, who was standing with her friends, screamed. Daddy, what are you doing? She ran up, her face wet with tears. Owen, at the door, began to cry, clinging to the teacher. Marcus stepped back, his anger turning to confusion. He wanted the truth, but he hadn't expected this. Abby fell to her knees, hugging Haley. I'm sorry, darling, she sobbed. Everything will be okay. What would you do if you were Nathan? Like and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Nathan let go of Caleb, his chest heaving. He looked at Haley, at Owen, then at Abby. We'll sort it out at home, he said, his voice cold. That's it. He walked out, the crowd at the door parting. Caleb leaned against the wall, rubbing his neck. Abby held Haley, her tears dripping onto the floor. The parents' whispers spread across the room. Someone was filming on a phone. Vanessa, at the entrance, clenched her fists. Marcus had ruined everything. Sophia stood in the bedroom, throwing clothes into a suitcase. Her movements were jerky, her eyes red from tears she could no longer hold back. The concert last night, the screams, the photo of Abby and Caleb on Marcus's phone, Caleb's silence, it had all been the last straw. She hadn't slept all night, and in the morning, when Caleb had gone to the office, she had called her friend Melissa and asked her to put her up. Caleb walked into the house, seeing the suitcase by the door. His face turned pale. Sophia, what are you doing? He asked, his voice hoarse. Where are you going? To Melissa's, she zipped up her suitcase without looking at him. I can't stay here, Caleb. Not after everything. After what? He took a step toward her, his hand shaking. I told you, there's nothing between Abby and me. It's just... Stop lying, Sophia turned, her voice rising to a scream. I saw the messages, I saw the photos. You're with her, Caleb. You betrayed me, you betrayed Nathan, you betrayed everyone. Caleb clenched his fists, his gaze falling to the floor. It's not like that, he muttered, but his voice was weak. We were just talking. You did? She laughed, but it was full of pain. You think I'll believe you? I've been with you for 10 years, Caleb. I know when you're lying. Go away, let me collect myself. Sophia, please, he stepped closer, but she pushed him away. Don't touch me, she screamed, her eyes flashing. I don't know who you are now, but I won't stay with you. She grabbed her suitcase and walked out, slamming the door. Caleb stood there, breathing hard. He knew he had lost her, and he couldn't blame anyone but himself. At the Walker house, Nathan sat in the living room, his face set in stone. Haley and Owen were upstairs, packing up their things. He'd decided to take them to his mother's, away from this nightmare. Abby stood at the kitchen table, her hands shaking, her eyes puffy from crying. The night passed in silence. Nathan didn't speak to her, just looked at her as if she were a stranger. Nathan, let's talk, she said quietly, her voice hoarse. I can explain. Explain? He stood up, his voice icy. Explain what, Abby? How did you kiss Caleb? How have you lied to me for months? It wasn't like that. She stepped toward him, her tears streaming. I didn't mean to. It just happened. I was lonely. You didn't notice me. Don't you dare blame me, he barked, slamming his fist on the table. We have kids, Abby, 12 years of marriage, and you're running around with my friend behind my back. Abby covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I hate myself for this, but I love you, Nathan. I want to make it right. Fix it. He snorted, his eyes full of contempt. You ruined everything. Take your things and get out. I don't want to see you. Nathan, please. She fell to her knees, her voice breaking. Don't take my children away from me. I'll do whatever you want. The children are better off without you, he said, turning away. I'm taking them to their mother, and you, do whatever you want. He walked out into the hallway, shouting for Haley and Owen to come down. Abby remained on the floor, her sobs echoing in the empty house. She heard the car drive away, and the silence fell over her like a shroud. She stood up, unsteadily, and walked into the bedroom. Her laptop was on the table, open to Instagram. Her blog, 5,000 followers, hundreds of posts about her happy family, felt like a lie now. She remembered how the likes had fed her insecurities, how she'd looked to them for validation that she mattered. It was false, and she couldn't stand it anymore. Abby went into settings and clicked delete account. It took a second to confirm, and her blog was gone as if she'd never existed. She closed her laptop, tears dripping onto the table. Without her blog, without Nathan, without her kids, she was nothing. Vanessa stood at the door of Cruz's house, clutching her phone. Marcus had returned from the service, his face as grim as ever. He had been avoiding her since the concert, and she knew why his action had blown everything up, and he blamed her for not stopping him. "Marcus, we need to talk," she said as he walked in, throwing his keys on the table. "About what?" He walked past without looking at her. "You got what you wanted. Everyone knows about Abby and Caleb." "I didn't mean to." Vanessa stepped toward him, her voice shaking. "I asked you not to interfere. And then you showed that photo and made a circus in front of the kids." "Circus?" Marcus turned, his eyes flashing. "They lied to everyone, Vanessa. Nathan's my friend, he deserved to know. And you kept quiet, even though you saw it all from the start. Because it's none of our business." She raised her voice, her hands clenched into fists. "You think you're a hero? You destroyed their families, Marcus. Haley was crying, Owen was too. This is on you." Marcus clenched his jaw, his face turning red. "Not on me," he said, his voice low. "On them. And on you, since you knew and kept quiet. You're as liar as they are." "Lying?" Vanessa gasped, her eyes filling with tears. "I was trying to save us, Marcus. I showed you the photo so you'd stop accusing me of cheating on you, and you're using it to drown everyone. Saving us?" he snorted, turning away. "You were saving yourself. Go away, Vanessa. I don't want to see you." "Marcus, please," she grabbed his hand, but he pulled away. "I said go away." His voice was cold. "I don't care where." Vanessa stepped back, tears streaming down her cheeks. She grabbed her bag and walked out, slamming the door. Marcus stood there, his anger replaced by emptiness. He knew he had lost her, but he couldn't back down. Abby sat in the empty living room, looking at the family photo on the wall, she, Nathan, Haley, and Owen on the beach 2 years ago. She wanted to call him, beg him to come back, but she knew he wouldn't answer. Instead, she texted Caleb. "Abby, Nathan kicked me out. The kids are with him. What should we do?" The answer came within a minute. "Caleb, Sophia is gone. I don't know, Abby. It's the end." She clutched the phone, her tears dripping onto the screen. Their connection had destroyed everything, and now they were alone in the rubble. Abby sat on a park bench, clutching a paper cup of coffee. The morning air was cool, leaves crunched underfoot, and the distant bark of a dog broke the silence. She adjusted her dark sweater, her eyes red from sleepless nights. It had been 2 weeks since the scandal at the concert, and her life had fallen apart. Nathan had taken Haley and Owen to live with his mother. Her blog had been deleted, and Caleb, her only outlet, had disappeared since their last message. She had texted Nathan yesterday, begging him to meet up, and to her surprise, he had agreed. Nathan showed up 10 minutes later, his steps heavy. He was wearing jeans and a gray jacket, his face drawn, with shadows under his eyes. He stopped at the bench without sitting down and looked at Abby, his gaze cold. "You wanted to talk," he said, his voice even but hard. "Speak." Abby swallowed, setting the coffee down on the bench. Her hands were shaking, but she forced herself to begin. "Nathan, I know I ruined everything," she said quietly, her voice shaking. "I can't turn back time, but I want to fix it. For Haley, for Owen, for us." "Us?" Nathan snorted, crossing his arms. "Did you think of us when you were screwing around with Caleb at the motel? or when you lied to my face." Abby closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "I was stupid," she whispered. "I felt invisible, Nathan. You were busy with work. I was just a mom, a wife, a nobody. Caleb, he listened to me. It's no excuse, I know, but I hate myself for it." Nathan looked at her, his face softening, but the anger not gone. "You think it was easy for me?" he asked, his voice growing louder. "I worked so hard for us to have everything, Abby, and instead of talking, you ran to my friend. How am I supposed to forgive that?" "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she looked up, her voice growing stronger. "I'm asking for a chance. I've made an appointment with a psychologist, starting therapy next week. I want to understand why I did it, why I was so weak. But the kids need a family, Nathan. They shouldn't have to suffer because of me." Nathan turned away, looking down the path where a couple and their dog were running. He thought about Haley crying after the concert, about Owen asking if his mom was coming home. He hated Abby, but he loved his kids. "I don't trust you," he said finally, his voice quieter. "And I don't know if I can. But the kids, they're asking about you. I'm coming home, Abby, for them. But I'm sleeping in the guest room, and there's no talking about us. We'll try couples therapy, but if you lie to me again, I'm taking the kids away forever." Abby nodded, her tears falling onto her lap. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this work. I swear it." Nathan looked at her, his eyes empty. "I've made an appointment with Dr. Clark," he said. "First session is Thursday. Don't be late." He turned and walked away without another word. Abby remained on the bench, clutching her cold coffee. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a step, a small, fragile step, but a step nonetheless. Meanwhile, Caleb sat in his office, staring at a blank computer screen. Sophia had left 2 weeks ago, and her silence was louder than any words. He'd texted her, called her, but she'd only responded briefly, "I need time." His life, his job, his home, his loneliness had become empty. Abby had stopped texting, and he was glad their relationship had been toxic, and he didn't want to go back to her. He picked up the phone and dialed Sophia, expecting an answering machine. But she answered on the third ring. "What do you want, Caleb?" Her voice was cold, tired. "Talk," he said, his voice shaking. "Please, Sophia, let's meet. I can't do this anymore." "Talk?" she snorted. "About what? About how you lied to me. About how you slept with Abby behind my back?" "I didn't," he trailed off, rubbing his face. "I didn't sleep with her. It was a mistake. I was weak, I know. But I love you, Sophia. Give me a chance to explain." "Explain." Her voice grew louder. "You ruined everything, Caleb. I'm sitting at Melissa's because I can't be in our house. You betrayed me, you betrayed Nathan, you betrayed everyone. What chance do you want?" "One conversation." He squeezed the phone, his voice breaking. "If you tell me to leave later, I'll leave. But I want you to hear." Sophia was silent, her breathing heavy. Caleb waited, feeling his hope fading. "Tomorrow," she said finally. "At the cafe on Main Street at noon. Don't be late." "Thank you," he whispered, but she had already hung up. Caleb leaned back in his chair, his eyes closing. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was an opportunity. He knew he had to be honest, even if it destroyed everything. Abby returned home to an empty house, but for the first time in weeks, she felt a glimmer of hope. She opened her laptop and wrote the appointment on her calendar. Dr. Clark, Thursday, 3 p.m. She wanted to call Haley, but stopped herself when Nathan said he would bring the kids himself tomorrow. Instead, she texted her sister, Kate. "Abby, Nathan has agreed to therapy. I'm starting mine next week. I don't know what will happen, but I'm trying." Kate replied a minute later. "Kate, you're doing the right thing, Abby. Hang in there. Call if you need to." Abby smiled, her tears starting to flow again, but now they weren't just from pain. She wanted her family back, and this was her only chance. Vanessa sat in a nearby cafe, scrolling through her phone. She hadn't seen Marcus since their fight, but she heard him blaming her for everything. She wanted to text him, but instead opened a chat with Sophia, who had asked to meet yesterday. Sophia wrote again. Sophia, have you seen anything else about Abby and Caleb? I need to know everything. Vanessa clutched the phone, her fingers still. She knew more than she was letting on, but she didn't want to be the one to finish Sophia off. She answered, Vanessa, just that photo. Sorry, Sophia. Let's meet tomorrow and talk. She put the phone away, feeling her own life crumbling. Windsor Road was no longer home. Sophia sat at a corner table in Bean and Brew, her fingers fiddling nervously with the edge of her napkin. The cafe was buzzing with morning customers, baristas shouting out orders, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. She wore a black sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back into a messy bun, and dark circles under her eyes. 2 weeks hadn't erased the pain of Caleb's betrayal from Melissa, but her curiosity, or maybe a glimmer of hope, had brought her here. Caleb walked in at exactly noon, his steps cautious. He was wearing a rumpled blue shirt, his face drawn, his eyes full of worry. When he saw Sophia, he smiled faintly and walked over, sitting down opposite her. Thank you for coming, he said, his voice hoarse. I didn't think you'd agree. Sophia looked at him. Her eyes were cold. I'm not here for you, she said, her voice firm. I want to understand why you did it, and what happens next. Caleb nodded, looking down at the table. He clenched his hands, gathering his thoughts. I was weak, he began quietly. Abby, she was there when I felt worthless. You were busy with doctors, with work, and I couldn't cope. We talked, then it became more. But I didn't sleep with her, Sophia. I swear. Sophia snorted, crossing her arms. You think this matters? Her voice grew louder. You lied to me, Caleb. For months. You dated her, texted her, held her hand. It's a betrayal, even without the sex. Caleb flinched, his face turning pale. I know, he said, his voice shaking. I hate myself for it. I betrayed you, Nathan, everyone. But I love you, Sophia. I want to make it right. Fix it. She leaned closer, her eyes flashing. How? You ruined our marriage. What can you fix? Caleb swallowed, his hands clenched into fists. I made an appointment with a therapist, starting next week. I want to understand why I did it, why I was such an idiot. And I want us to try again. Together. Sophia was silent, her gaze fixed on him. She expected a trick, but his voice sounded sincere, and his eyes were full of pain. She remembered their wedding, their dreams of a family, their trips to the mountains. But then she remembered Abby's messages, the photo from the cafe, and the pain returned. Do you think therapy will solve everything? She asked, her voice quieter but harsh. Do you think I can just forget how you betrayed me? I'm not asking to forget. Caleb leaned closer, his voice breaking. I'm asking for a chance. I know trust will have to be earned, but I'm willing to work at it. For you, for us. Sophia turned away, looking out the window. The street was bustling with life, cars, pedestrians, a normal day. But her world was in ruins, and she didn't know if it could be put back together. I've always wanted a child, she said finally, her voice almost a whisper. You knew that, but after all the doctors, all the failures, I realized that a biological child is not the only way. I want to adopt Caleb. It's my dream. Will you support it? Caleb froze, his eyes widening. He knew how important this dream was to her, but he had resisted before, afraid he wasn't ready. Now, having lost everything, he knew this was his chance. Yes, he said, his voice firm. I will support it. We will begin the adoption process if you give me a chance. I will do whatever it takes. Sophia looked at him. Her eyes were still cold, but there was a spark in them. That doesn't mean I've forgiven you, she said. And it doesn't mean I'm coming back tomorrow. You're going to therapy, and I'm going to too. If you tell one more lie, Caleb, it's over. Forever. I won't lie, he squeezed her hand, but she didn't return the gesture. I swear, Sophia. She nodded, moving her hand away. I'll think about it, she said, standing up. Vanessa stood in front of the mirrored wall of her new fitness studio, Pulse in downtown Charlotte. The space was small but bright, with new exercise machines and colorful yoga mats. She adjusted her black workout bra, wiped sweat from her forehead, and smiled at her reflection. Today was the studio's first day, and despite her nerves, she felt alive. The past month fighting with Marcus, leaving home, moving into a tiny apartment had been hell, but now she was building something of her own. The door rang, and her first client entered, a woman of about 40 with a timid smile. "Are you Vanessa?" she asked, holding her gym bag. "I signed up for a morning workout." "Yes, it's me," Vanessa came up, holding out her hand. "Good to see you, Linda, right? Come on, let's start with some warm-ups." She turned on the music, and the workout began. Vanessa led the class with confidence, but without the flirtatiousness that had been her habit at the gym. She no longer smiled for attention or jokes for likes. Her voice was warm, professional, and Linda left with a smile, signing up for next week. Vanessa exhaled, feeling like this was her new path. After her workout, she opened her phone and saw a message from Abby. "Abby, how was the studio opening? I can't believe you did that. I want to come by, if possible." Vanessa smiled as she typed her reply. "Vanessa, everything is cool, come anytime. There is a class tomorrow at 10 a.m. Do you want to try it?" Abby responded almost immediately. "Abby, it's coming. Thanks for supporting me. I need it." Vanessa put her phone down, her thoughts returning to Abby. She'd been devastated since the concert. Nathan had kicked her out. The kids were with him. The blog was gone. Vanessa, herself on edge, had texted her a week ago, asking to meet up. They'd talked for 3 hours in a coffee shop, and Abby had confessed how her insecurities had driven her to Caleb. Vanessa hadn't judged. She knew how easy it was to make mistakes when looking for attention. They'd texted almost every day since then, and Vanessa had become the friend Abby had been missing. She opened her laptop and checked the schedule of psychology classes at the local college. After her fight with Marcus, she realized that her flirting, her need for approval, was more than just a habit. It was a defense against insecurity. She signed up for the evening class to understand herself, her mistakes, and maybe one day help others. The first class was tomorrow, and she was nervous but determined. "This is my chance," she muttered, closing the laptop. Marcus sat in his auto shop, wiping his hands on a rag. His truck was parked in the corner, his tools scattered, and the radio was playing oldies. The house had been empty since Vanessa left, and he spent his evenings here, working until midnight. He blamed her for keeping quiet about Caleb and Abby, but deep down he knew he had ruined their marriage. His jealousy, his anger, his impulsive behavior at the concert, it was all on him. He pulled out his phone and opened their old chat. Vanessa's last message, "Can I hang out?" had gone unanswered. He wanted to text her, but he didn't know what to say. Instead, he opened the website of a local gym, where he found an ad for support groups for men. "Anger and relationship work," the ad read. Marcus chuckled, but wrote down the number. He was tired of being the one who broke things. "I have to try," he told himself, putting the phone away. He walked back to the car, but for the first time in weeks, he felt like he could change. Abby came into Vanessa's studio the next morning, wearing sweatpants and a gray t-shirt. Her face was pale, but she smiled when she saw Vanessa. "This place is amazing," Abby said, looking around the studio. "You really did it." "Yeah," Vanessa winked, handing her a mat. "Let's try yoga. It'll relax you." The workout was easy, but Abby felt better than she expected. After the workout, they sat at the water station, and Abby started talking. "I was in therapy yesterday," she said, her voice quiet. "Nathan's back, but he's sleeping in the guest room. The kids, they barely talk to me, but I'm trying." Vanessa nodded, her gaze warm. "You're doing great, Abby," she said. "It's hard, but you're not giving up. Haley and Owen will see that. Give them time." "Thank you," Abby smiled weakly. You're really helping me. I didn't expect us to be friends." "Life is strange," Vanessa laughed. "I didn't think so either. But you know, we both screwed up. Now we have to get up. Abby nodded, her eyes shining. You're right, she said. I don't want to be the one who ruins everything. They talked for another half hour, and Abby left, promising to return. Vanessa watched her go, feeling that their friendship was not just a coincidence, but something important. That evening, Vanessa sat in a college classroom, clutching a notebook. The professor, a woman with kind eyes, began a lecture on behavioral psychology. Vanessa took notes, her thoughts swirling around Marcus, Abby, herself. She realized that her flirting had been a way to fill a void, but now she wanted to be honest with herself and others. After class, she wrote to Sophia, whom she had met yesterday. Vanessa, how are you? Have you decided anything about Caleb? Sophia replied an hour later. Sophia, I gave him a chance, but I don't trust him. Thanks for listening yesterday. Vanessa smiled, feeling her role in this story change. She was no longer the gossip with the photo, she was the friend who helped. Marcus parked outside the support group. He was nervous, but he walked in, clutching his phone. There were several men in the room, and the host nodded affably. Marcus sat in a corner, listening as the others shared their stories, anger, mistakes, attempts to be better. When he left, he wrote to Vanessa. Marcus, I was wrong. I want to talk if you're ready. He didn't expect a response, but sent the message, knowing it was his first step. Abby stood at the stove, making breakfast for Haley and Owen. The smell of pancakes and coffee filled the kitchen, and the morning sun streamed through the window. She wore a gray sweater, her hair pulled back into a ponytail, her face still pale, but her eyes no longer so empty. 2 months of therapy, personal and family, hadn't brought her marriage back, but it had given her the strength to get up every day. Nathan sat at the table, reading the news on his tablet, his face calm but distant. Haley, Owen, come down, Abby called, setting the plates on the table. The pancakes are ready. Haley, wearing her favorite baseball cap, breezed into the kitchen, followed by Owen, carrying a stuffed dinosaur. They sat and talked about school, and Abby smiled as they listened. These moments, ordinary, family-like, were her anchor. Dad, are you coming to my game tomorrow? Owen asked, spreading syrup on a pancake. Of course, Nathan put the tablet down, his voice warm. I won't miss your goals. Abby looked at him, hoping to catch his eye, but he looked away. Their marriage was cold. Nathan slept in the guest room, talking only about the kids or the bills. Couples therapy with Dr. Clark had helped. They learned to listen to each other, but the wound from her betrayal was too deep. Abby knew that trust, if it returned, would be a long time coming. I've booked us in for our next session on Wednesday, she said quietly, looking at Nathan. If that's okay with you. Okay, he nodded without looking up. I will. Abby pressed her lips together, but said nothing. It was better than nothing. She turned back to the kids, helping Owen cut a pancake, and thought about her own therapy. She'd learned to admit her insecurities, her guilt, and it was making her stronger. Haley was still angry, but she'd started talking to her more, and Owen was holding her goodnight again. They were small victories, but they kept her going. At the Thompson house, Sophia sat on the couch, leafing through a folder of paperwork from the adoption agency. She and Caleb had completed the first steps of the process and were now waiting for approval to meet the child, a 4-year-old girl named Lee. Sophia wore a dark green sweater, her face alight with cautious optimism, though the shadows of the past still lingered. Caleb walked in with 2 mugs of tea, placing one in front of her. He was wearing jeans and a gray t-shirt, his eyes still looking tired, but with a sparkle in them. I checked my email, he said, sitting down next to me. The agency promised an answer by the end of the week. Okay, Sophia nodded, her voice soft but controlled. I'm still nervous. It's a big step. Me too, Caleb looked at her, his hand hovering over hers but not touching. But I believe we can do this together. Sophia smiled weakly, but her eyes were wary. She had returned home 3 weeks ago after Caleb had started therapy and shown her the agency paperwork. Their marriage had been fragile, trust had been rebuilt slowly through honest conversations and shared effort. Therapy had helped Caleb work through his weaknesses, and Sophia had learned to let go of her anger. Lee, their future daughter, was their shared goal, and it had kept them together. "Were you at the group yesterday?" she asked, sipping her tea. "Yeah," Caleb nodded. "Talk about, well, about how I let you down. It's hard, but it helps." "Okay," Sophia looked at him, her voice softening. "I can see you're trying, Caleb, but if you do it again—" "It won't happen again," he interrupted, his voice firm. "I swear, Sophia." She nodded, but didn't answer. They sat in silence, leafing through the documents, and for the first time in months, the silence was not heavy, but calm. Vanessa stood in her Pulse Fitness studio, checking her workout schedule. Her business was growing. She now had 20 regular clients, and she was planning to hire a second trainer. She wore black leggings and a bright top, her face radiating confidence. The psychology classes she took twice a week had changed the way she saw herself. She realized that her flirting had been an escape from her fear of being unwanted, and now she was learning to build relationships without masks. She opened her phone and saw a message from Abby. "Abby, therapy was hard yesterday, but we talked. Haley hugged me. Thank you for being there." Vanessa smiled as she typed her reply. "Vanessa, that's a huge step, Abby. You're awesome. Will you come to yoga tomorrow?" Abby responded with a smiley face, and Vanessa put her phone down. Their friendship had become her rock, and she was happy to help Abby find herself. She knew Sophia was moving on, too. They'd talked yesterday, and Sophia had mentioned adoption. Windsor Road had changed, but Vanessa felt like her new life was just beginning. Her marriage to Marcus was dead. After he texted her to meet up, she texted him back, but he never showed up, and she knew it was over. She heard he was going to a support group and hoped he'd find his way, but their paths had diverged forever. Marcus sat in a cafe near the service, holding a coffee. He was wearing a dark jacket, his face serious but calm. The support group had become his salvation. He talked about his jealousy, his anger, about losing Vanessa. He began to work on himself, signed up for anger management classes, and even helped a new guy at the service, teaching him. He didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time he didn't feel lost. He opened his phone and texted Nathan. "Marcus, how are you? Heard you and Abby are trying. If you want a beer, I'm in." Nathan replied an hour later. "Nathan, we're holding up for now. The beer sounds good. Let's have it next week." Marcus smiled, putting his phone away. It was a small step, but he knew his friendship with Nathan could survive. Abby was clearing away the breakfast plates when Haley came downstairs again, holding a textbook. "Mom, can you help me with the story?" she asked, her voice cautious. "Sure," Abby smiled, her heart aching with joy. "Let's sit down." They sat at the table, and Abby explained, feeling the connection with her daughter being restored. Nathan had gone to work, but his words about therapy were still ringing in her head. Their marriage was still not repaired, but hope, thin as the morning light, was beginning to shine through. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.